Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we diving deep into the life of a figure whose name echoes through millennia. Alexander the Great. Was he truly the greatest general in history? Let's find out. Our story begins in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedon. A prince is born, son of King Philip II, a brilliant military strategist in his own right, and Queen Olympias, a woman of fierce ambition and intellect. From a young age, it was clear Alexander was no ordinary boy. He was sharp, charismatic, and possessed an unquenchable thirst for glory. And who better to mold this young mind than the greatest philosopher of the age, Aristotle? For 3 years, Aristotle tutored Alexander, teaching him philosophy, politics, medicine, and literature. He instilled in the young prince a deep love for Homeric epics, especially the Iliad. Alexander saw himself as a modern-day Achilles, destined for heroic deeds and eternal fame. This wasn't just a story to him, it was a blueprint for his life. But Alexander's education wasn't confined to the classroom. His father Philip made sure he learned the art of war firsthand. By the age of 16, Alexander was already serving as a regent and commanding troops. At just 18, he led the decisive cavalry charge at the Battle of Chaeronea, crushing the elite Theban sacred band and securing Macedonian dominance over Greece. He wasn't just a prince, he was a proven warrior. Then, in 336 BC, tragedy struck. King Philip II was assassinated, and at the tender age of 20, Alexander ascended to a shaky throne. The Greek city-states, long resentful of Macedonian rule, saw this as their chance to rebel. Thebes, in particular, rose up. Alexander's response was swift and brutal. He marched south, besieged the city, and razed it to the ground, sparing only the temples and the house of the poet Pindar. The message was clear and terrifying. Defiance would not be tolerated. With Greece pacified, Alexander turned his eyes to the east, towards his father's ultimate, unfulfilled dream, the conquest of the mighty Persian Empire. This was the largest and wealthiest empire the world had ever seen, ruled by King Darius III. To many, attacking it seemed like madness. The Persian army vastly outnumbered Alexander's. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia with an army of around 48,000 men. It was a gamble of epic proportions. His first major test came at the Granicus River. The Persians held the high ground on the opposite bank, a strong defensive position. Against the advice of his seasoned generals, Alexander ordered a direct assault. He personally led the charge across the river, plunging straight into the heart of the Persian lines. His boldness was contagious. The Macedonians fought with incredible ferocity, and against all odds, they shattered the Persian forces. This victory opened up the entire coast of Asia Minor. A year later, at Issus, Alexander faced Darius III himself. The battlefield was a narrow coastal plain, which actually negated the Persians' numerical superiority. Darius, confident in his numbers, expected an easy victory. But Alexander spotted a weakness in the Persian line. In a move that would become his signature, he led his elite companion cavalry in a daring charge directly at Darius. Panic seized the Persian king. He fled the battlefield, and his army, seeing their leader abandon them, collapsed into chaos. Alexander captured Darius's family, including his mother, wife, and daughters, but treated them with the utmost respect and honor, a gesture that earned him admiration even among his enemies. Instead of pursuing Darius immediately, Alexander made a strategic decision to secure the Mediterranean coastline first. This meant taking the island fortress of Tyre, a city deemed impregnable. For 7 long months, the Macedonians laid siege. The Tyrians taunted them from their high walls, believing they were safe. But they underestimated Alexander's ingenuity. He ordered his engineers to build a massive causeway, a land bridge stretching half a mile across the sea to the island. Under constant attack, his men built the mole, meter by meter. Once it reached the walls, siege towers were rolled in, and the city fell. The Siege of Tyre is still studied today as a masterpiece of military engineering and sheer willpower. After securing Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator and hailed as a pharaoh. Founding the city of Alexandria, that would become a beacon of learning, Alexander was ready for the final showdown. In 331 BC, on the plains of Gaugamela, near modern-day Iraq, the two armies met for the last time. Darius had gathered an immense force, reportedly numbering over 250,000 soldiers. including scythed chariots and war elephants. He had chosen a wide, flat plain to ensure his numbers would be decisive. Alexander's army was outnumbered at least 5-1. The night before the battle, his general Parmenion suggested a night attack. Alexander famously replied, "I will not steal my victory." He wanted to defeat Darius in a fair fight, to prove Macedonian superiority beyond any doubt. The battle that followed was a masterclass in tactics. Alexander advanced with his line at an angle, baiting the Persians to overextend. As Darius sent his cavalry to envelop the Macedonian right flank, a gap opened in the Persian center. This was the moment Alexander had been waiting for. Just as he did at Issus, he led a thunderous charge straight for Darius. History repeated itself. Darius fled, and the largest army of the ancient world disintegrated. The Persian Empire was now his. Alexander marched into Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the great capitals of Persia, claiming their immense treasures. In a controversial act, he burned the grand palace of Persepolis. Some say it was revenge for the Persian burning of Athens, a century and a half earlier. Others claim it was a drunken mistake. Whatever the reason, it symbolized the end of an era. But Alexander wasn't done. His ambition knew no bounds. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was an explorer, driven by an insatiable curiosity, a desire to reach the very ends of the world. He pushed his army further east into lands the Greeks knew only through modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. The terrain was brutal, the fighting against local warlords relentless. It was here, in Central Asia, that he married Roxana, the daughter of a Sogdian chieftain. This was a political move to pacify the region, but also a sign of his growing policy of fusion-blending Greek and Persian cultures. He encouraged his soldiers to marry Persian women and adopted elements of Persian court dress and customs, much to the dismay of his proud Macedonian veterans. They saw it as a betrayal of their traditions. His journey led him to the Indus Valley in India. At the Battle of the Hydaspes River, he faced King Porus and his army of war elephants, a terrifying new weapon for the Macedonians. It was one of Alexander's hardest-fought battles. Despite the terrifying elephants, Alexander's superior strategy won the day. He was so impressed by Porus's bravery that he not only returned his kingdom, but also added more territory to it, making him a loyal ally. After this victory, Alexander wanted to march on to the Ganges River, but his army had finally reached its limit. After 8 years and thousands of miles of marching and fighting, they were exhausted. They were homesick and terrified of the giant armies rumored to lie ahead. At the Hythasis River, his loyal troops mutinied. For the first time, his men refused to go further. A dejected Alexander finally agreed to turn back. The return journey was a disaster. He split his forces, sending part of the army back by sea, while he led the rest through the brutal Gedrosian desert. Thousands died from heat and thirst. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Back in Babylon, Alexander began planning his next great campaigns, a circumnavigation of Arabia and an invasion of North Africa. He was also working to consolidate his vast multicultural empire. But these plans were never realized. In June of 323 BC, after a prolonged bout of fever, possibly from malaria, typhoid, or poison, Alexander the Great died. He was just 32 years old. On his deathbed, when asked to whom he left his empire, he allegedly whispered, to the strongest, whether true or not, his death without a clear heir plunged his empire into 50 years of civil war as his generals, the Diadochi, tore it apart, carving out their own kingdoms. So, what is Alexander's legacy? In just over a decade, he redrew the map of the ancient world, creating one of the largest empires in history. He was undefeated in battle, a tactical genius whose strategies are still studied at military academies worldwide. He led from the front, sharing the dangers of his men and inspiring incredible loyalty. But his impact goes far beyond the battlefield. His conquests spread Greek language, culture, and thought across a vast area, initiating the Hellenistic period. This fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures created a vibrant new world, paving the way for the Roman Empire and shaping the course of Western civilization. Was he the greatest general in history? When you consider his undefeated record, the scale of his conquests, his brilliant tactical innovations, and his personal leadership, the argument is incredibly compelling. He was more than a conqueror. He was a force of nature who changed the world forever. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating figures. See you next time.